All right, so we're just about finished the game here. We want to display the score and also sort of indicate when the game is over. So there's a few little things that we're going to talk about here. One of them is the text. Now, I just noticed this is kind of messy here with all this, so I'm just going to create another empty. Create empty, make sure that's 000, so reset. I'll call this pickups. And I'm just going to throw all of them into there. Okay, just tidy up, a little bit of organization. Now, the next thing, like I was mentioning in the last video, is we want to create that score text, and that's part of the UI system. So if you come under Game Object, and you come down a little bit further than below, before, we have a UI, and what we've got here is Text Mesh Pro. In the old days, it used to be just the text, and then Text Mesh Pro was an addition. Now, sort of Text Mesh Pro is the foundational one. Now, it does say, do you want to import the essentials? Yes, we have to import the essentials. So give that a second there. You don't have to import all the examples and extras. You can play around with that after if you want. So once we've done that, we do have kind of two things that are going on. One is there's a canvas. And so if I zoom out, this canvas is basically our screen. And I always think of it as an overlay. It's sort of sitting in front of our screen and allows us to put our UI elements. You can actually have multiple canvases. So if you get more complicated games, you can have multiple canvases in your game. We're just going to have one to hold the score and sort of the game over, you win text. Okay. And so here we put in this text. And so I'm going to call this one score text. It's a good idea to have, again, names. Now at the moment, that's sort of the center, or I guess that's sort of the anchor of the center. And then you see the text over here. One thing to consider is that screen sizes will vary in size. And so if you just say, oh, it's going to be 500 pixels to the left of center, that can leave it sort of in the middle of the screen. If you're dealing with a really wide screen that's maybe, say, 2,000 pixels wide roughly, then it's only going to be, say, a quarter of the way over, or half the way over, I guess, if it's already halfway. But regardless, it might not be where you want it to be. So what there are is little anchors. And so if you come up into this little thing here, it says Anchor Presets. I'm going to hold the Shift, and I'm going to hold the Alt, and I'm going to set that position into the top left. I'm going to put my text in the top left here. And you can see that it's moved up. And then what I like to do, I think I just closed that down, is just move it off a little bit from that side. So I think we're good. This seems to be, I keep sort of clicking on that. What I'm looking for is just sort of moving the text over. So I think our anchors are there. We're good. I'm just going to move that text over a little bit. I think it's a little bit different than it was before. So let me just sort of go back. So it's 100. Let me make that 105. Okay, and then just bring that down, maybe minus 35, maybe. Just bring it off that corner. Now, when I look at it in terms of the game, you can see it sitting there. It's a little hard to see. So we can go down and change the color. I'll just make it black. It doesn't really matter, but at least we can see it. Now, new text is the sort of the placeholder. We're going to change it, but it's always a good idea to sort of put in here what you think it's going to look like. And so then I can sort of see, okay, I can go up to 9,999. So that's probably good in terms of the width and so on. Maybe I'll leave it sort of like that. If I go back to the scene here, I can see it. If I ever wanted to widen it, I can drag it over. So that way, again, if I wanted to put more zeros in, right now I've got that room there. But for my purposes, I think that's good. So I'll just sort of squeeze it back. I guess I could have done Control Z there, but that's fine. Okay, next, while we're at it, let's put the win text in because we're sort of doing the same thing. So I'm going to create a new text object. So UI, Text Mesh Pro, and there it is there. This one we'll call the win text and put it in. And this one I'm going to center here. So I'm going to just sort of Shift and Alt, So now it's centered in my screen. And then again, I'm probably going to change the color. So let's just make that black. Again, your color could be different. Okay, as long as it's legible, you're good. And this one here, there's a bunch of different properties that you can play with. I'm going to just center that inside, and I'm going to center inside the box as well. So it's really centered. This is centered in the screen, and then the text box, inside the text box, the text is centered in that. So if I take a little look here, well, actually, before I do that, let me just type in maybe you are awesome. You win. Something like that. Now, when I go and look at it here, yeah, okay, whatever. It works. You can obviously modify it, but looks like it's centered, and it's got the text in there. Now, again, this is just sort of placeholder text, so that's not necessarily what it's going to say. It's just what we've got here. Now, we're going to actually have to code it. So at the moment, nothing's going on. So what I'm going to do is go back into Unity, and we're going to put all the code into the Marble controller. Having said that, we're just sort of simplifying things later on. If you go on, we might talk about like a score manager or a game manager. The game manager might sort of manage the score. At the moment, the player is kind of doing it as well, which is maybe not the best. It's sort of like the player being the referee, but that's okay. So what we'll do here is come up to the top, and we're going to put in those two texts. Now, we're going to make this public, okay? So just make sure that you've made this public here. The data type, the thing we're going to use is TMP text. So there it is there. So TMP underscore text, and we'll call this first one score text. And while we're at it, we'll do another one, public TMP underscore text, and we'll call this one the win text. Now, what we're going to have to do is update the score 2 times. One is when the game begins, and also when we score a point, right? We don't want to be constantly updating the score. We know that the score is going to need to be updated when we score a point. I'm going to create a new function. You can actually create your own function. So I'm going to come down here. So making sure I'm after the on trigger enter those curly braces, but before the very last curly brace. And I'm going to go private void. It won't return anything. And I'll say update score. And that's what we'll call this function. And we're going to do 2 things here. One is we're going to print out the score. And so what I do is score text. There it is. Score text dot text. That's going to grab the text box. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a string here, score space, and then we're going to add on the score dot toString. And what that will allow us to do is create the text box. Okay, to create the text to go into the text box, and it will put the score in there. Now, just to show you this, I'm going to save it. Actually, this will not work yet because the update score isn't being called. So if I sort of run it, just to sort of show you, nothing's happening. So I did create a function that should update the score, but as you can see, nothing's happening. It says 0, 0, and so on. What I'm going to do is call or use that function. So I'm going to call this update score. I'm going to do that right at the start because once I've set the score to 0, I want to make sure that update score is run so that it looks better, that it looks right. So it should just say 0, not all those zeros. So just making sure I saved it, which I didn't, and go back. Now what I should notice is this changes to 0 right away, which it didn't seem to. So I actually have an error. I forgot one important thing. It says null reference exception. Object reference not sent to an instance of the object. And so what I forgot to do, on purpose or maybe not, is over here it said the score text. It doesn't know who the score text is. So just like we did before, I got to drag the score text in. And while I'm at it, I'll drag the win text in. Okay, now let's see if that error occurs. Error should be gone. And notice now the score went to 0. Now it still doesn't update, right? I'm still having issues where, okay, it's not updating. We'll get to that in a second. Let's get rid of this here. We don't need this yet. So I'm going to come in here And I'm also going to set the WinText dot text. So the WinText box, I'm going to set it to an empty string, which means basically it's going to be blank. So let's just see if that works. Save that up. Hit play. So this should be 0, and then this text should disappear. Perfect. Okay, almost done. So what we need to do next is we're going to run, once we score a point, so every time we score a point, let us run that update score as well. So I've done that. Let's just see now, when I run it, do I update my score? And then we just have one last thing to do after that. Okay, so here we are, we'll hit play. So now everything looking good. Let's see if I hit point. Yep, it's updating the score, so I'm getting 5 points, which is perfect. The last thing that we need to do is declare if it's a winner. So I'm going to put a little bit more code into my update score here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check. Now, did I have 5 or 6? I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many of these pickups did I have? I had 6. Okay, so 6 times 5 is 30. So if my score gets to 30 or more, I'm going to win. So here I'm going to say if the score is greater than or equal to 30, let's just say, then I'm going to take to the WinText.text, and I'm going to set that to just a simple you win. Okay, so it doesn't have to be the same as before. Basically, I'm just getting the text on there. Hit play or save, sorry. Go back to Unity. Hit play. Everything's looking good. Let's just make sure I can score my points. So there's 5, 10, 15, 20. So 25. Now the moment we've all been waiting for. Am I going to win? I win. Okay, perfect. So the game is kind of over. I've won it. I've picked up all my pickups. And that's it. All right, so just make sure you save your game. And now you have your base game. So from here, we're going to be able to build whatever we want to add. So if we want to make it more of a game, we could set up a timer. We could set up different pickups. We could set up pickups that kill you. We can go to the asset store and add all these different graphics. You could expand the game beyond what we've got here, add some music, add some sound effects, all those different things to make this game better. But the nice thing is you've got a good foundation. You've learned some of the programming in C#. You've learned how to use the Unity interface, talking about the different properties in the inspector, being able to work in the hierarchy and organize your objects, being able to work in your assets and keep this organized and know what a script is and know what a prefab is, know what a game object is, all these things. There's a lot of information here. And so you've got a solid foundation to continue exploring and turn this pretty mundane game into something much more interesting. All right, so I'm looking forward to seeing all those modifications you make and making this game exciting, at least more exciting than it is presently. All right, good luck with those modifications.